You're listening to Bootstrapped Bossin by James Alexander, a mini-series showcasing some successful Irish bootstrap businesses. You won't find these CEOs perched on rooftops, smiling for a press release. They're in the engine room, making the hard decisions to achieve sustainable growth.
So joined today by Denis Coleman. Denis is the CEO of WorkCompass, who are an AI coaching solution headquartered in Cork in Ireland. So Denis, thanks very much for joining us. How are you?
No problem. Thanks, James. Nice to be here.
Thanks very much. So look, Denis, I've given you a sort of short intro, but could you maybe tell us who is WorkCompass and what do you do?
Who is yeah, it's a good question. I suppose in answering, I think for us all, right? I mean, imagine, James, right, that you had a coach at work, right? Somebody that was really there to help you succeed, help you achieve your potential. Just like imagine the impact that would have on you, on your performance, on your productivity, on your happiness at work. Imagine the impact it would have on your team and the organization overall. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to make coaching a part of everyday working life in organizations. And we've developed our own artificial intelligence, our proprietary AI, to help people set smart goals and then based on their reported progress, create and deliver coaching feedback.
Okay.
That's WorkCompass.
All right, very interesting. And you've been going for a while now, sort of quietly going about your business.
Yeah.
How did it come about?
How did it come? God, that's a good question. I spent the majority of my career working for large US multinationals, and I was in finance. I started my career in finance, and as part of that, I spent quite a bit of time working on mergers and acquisitions there. And we bought a bunch of businesses from people, and I always kind of felt, God, I wonder if I could do that. I wonder if I could found a business, if I could scale it to something significant. And that never left me really, right? And for, I don't know, the better part of 6 or 7 or 8 years, that just went around and around and around in my head. And eventually I kind of, despite trying to get it out of my head and forget about it, it wouldn't leave, and got to the point where I said, look, I think I gotta try, and see if I can.
Yeah. And obviously, look, the theme here is bootstrap businesses. I suppose at what point did you decide, right, I'm going all into this and quitting the day job?
I think I spent probably the guts of 5+ years of just going around in my head, and the guts of 9, 10, 12, maybe even 12 months, right? Seriously investigating performance management and this space before I jumped into it. And like a lot of desk research, really. But when I'd worked for one of the US multinational I worked for, I spent part of my career in the States and a part of that time in California, the home of venture capital and early stage investing. So in the process of just researching this, I went out to California. I spent 3 weeks there in total, essentially pitching the idea, right, to any investment group I had, I could get in front of, just to take some soundings and to see, look, if I could do something here, is there an appetite to maybe fund it? Do they think it's a good idea? Do they think it's commercial? And when I kind of came back from that, I was just convinced, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. Now, paradoxically, I never took any institutional money along the way, right? But it was a great way of validating the thoughts and ideas and research that I'd done.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because you would think kind of taking on the funding is validation in a lot of ways. But what did you kind of hear in your pitches that gave you the confidence?
I don't know if some of the feedback gave me any confidence. I mean, it was rough, a lot of it. I mean, but it was a wonderful learning experience. I remember pitching to, because you can sign up like there are, Silicon Valley is awash with venture capital firms, private equity firms, angel groups. They're everywhere, right? Literally everywhere. Everybody's a part of something.
Okay.
And so there's tons of them there, and you can just sign up, and you would be added to the roster for the next session, whenever that might be. And I remember pitching to Steve Wozniak's angel group out there and being ripped apart. But one of the guys, I'm not going to give you his name, but I will never forget him, came up to me afterwards, and I had an honest conversation with me. He said, look, I think you have something here, right? I mean, if you can get, make a business out of this, I think that'll, could be wildly successful. And I said, but your pitching is terrible.
And it was just you, no co-founders. You were just going at it.
No, and I along the way of obviously given, that's something I've thought about a lot. And there are days where I think, oh my God, I wish I had a co-founder that I could just hand the child the baby, okay, you take care of the baby here today, right? I'm wrecked. And there are days when I would just love that. And then there are days when I go, oh, thank God, right? I have literally nobody to fight with, If it's wildly successful, that's all on me, right? If it's absolutely shocking, right, and it all goes pear-shaped, that's all on me, So it's a mixed blessing.
Okay. And then obviously making the decision to leave employment and start it, did you have funding, self-funding to give you a certain runway, or, how did you even manage the conversation at home?
Yeah. How I managed it at home. I think my wife knew. It wasn't a shock when we started talking about it, because this had been a conversation for a while. My wife had worked at the same multinational as I had, so I'd kind of seen a lot of the stuff that I had. So it wasn't really a surprise, But we did sit down. We did talk about it, and and have a very, very serious conversation about, well, what if it didn't work? What's the plan B? Because we had kids, we had 3 kids when I started this, and a mortgage, and et cetera, and everything that goes along with it.
Yeah.
And so we sat down and kind of said, look, okay, we had some cash that was going to maybe get it launched. We talked about the runway we had. We talked about, what would be the milestones? Okay, so if we get to this point at this stage with this much, okay, maybe we'll move on. We'll go to base camp 2, maybe.
Okay.
So we sat down. We talked about all those things. We talked about, what is the plan if it just doesn't work at all? I went and I spoke to some recruiters. Said, look, okay, if you had to place me again, how long would it take for this type of role and that type of salary? So we had a good plan B, and I think that was, and I'm glad we did that, right? They were sometimes scary conversations to have, because you're talking about the absolute worst that could happen here. So if this all, you spend all the money and it goes nowhere, it flops, right? And you've got to go back and get a job. Where would it be, and for how much? How much runway would we have? For how long could we pay the mortgage? These very scary conversations, right? But I'm glad we had them, because at the end of that process, I knew, right, this is how long I have, this is how much I have, this is the plan B. And it just, and then when I started, right, there was very little fear, right? I was just absolutely going for it, bald-headed, right, to make this work, right? And I had a plan B, and that was over here to the side, fine. I didn't at any stage during that process going, oh my God. There was no, I didn't put myself in a situation where I'd have to panic and come up with a plan B. in the process. That was done.
Yeah, very pragmatic.
Very pragmatic, and I know. I mean, look, watching and listening to like institutional investors, like I've heard people say, "Oh, you want to see, the founders be all in. You want to see, like I think some certainly the old. I think it's changing now, but some of the old school guys would like want to say, look, they have no other option, right, but to take your money and make it successful, And I think. You have to be all in on this, right? You've got to, give it 150% of your energy and attention and everything, right? And but you would be crazy, right, not to have a plan B for yourself. And that doesn't mean that you're not committed to this 110%, 150%, right? It just means you're not a fool.
Yeah. Yeah, because you hear the other side of saying having a plan B means you're not all in. But how long's WorkCompass been going for now? Is it 8 years?
About 8 years, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that's a good stint, and I don't think plan B's come out in that time anyway.
No, still at it.
Yeah.
Still on plan A.
And let's talk about the challenges at the very start then. So it's just you. How did you start bringing on board people and having to make those tough investment decisions early on?
Well, I think so. Like in terms of like the overall strategy, right? I decided very early from the beginning. I decided that I wasn't going to seek institutional money to start, because I thought that. Although there's a ton of it in the world, and in the US in particular, a lot of the US VCs, right, unless there's a local lead, they're probably not interested in coming in,
Okay.
And so then you have to get venture capital money in Ireland. Say that's a small pool. If it's a small pool and it is tiny, right, your chances are not good, and also the value you're going to get will not be high. So you're suffering monster dilution very, very early. And I think that it is in those early days, right, that you have a monster opportunity as a founder to create value for yourself. So the further you can get, and I'm not opposed to institutional money at all, right? There's lots of problems it can solve and things it can do, but it's not going to solve every single problem, right? So there's a time, there's a place for it. But in those early days, you as a founder have a monstrous opportunity to create value and wealth for yourself, right? And that was my strategy. So get as far as you can, as quickly as you can, with as little as you can. And my strategy was to get to a product, right, and a paying customer or customers before I would ever look for any form of external money.
Okay. And how long did that take?
It depends from where you judge the start line, right?
Okay, yeah.
So by the time I had actually hired somebody, a developer, to create something, right, I had a monstrous amount of work done, right? So I had, I pretty much designed the first application, including like the workflows, the wireframes, the analytics, the whole lot, right? I had a schema, just, okay, this is what I want, right? I kind of mocked up even screens, and I'm not a developer, right? But my son at the time started going to Coder Dojo, so I used to bring him and maybe follow along. Right?
Bring him.
Absolutely. Right? So I had an awful lot of work done, and so like I knew exactly what I wanted, what I needed, right? So when I hired somebody, I said, okay, we have 13 weeks now, and I don't have money for 13 weeks in 3 days. I have money for 13 weeks, right? To produce something here that I can sell. 13 weeks. And I know that sounds utterly ridiculous, right? And maybe it was, right? But we did it, right? I think that, you know, you got to get it out. You got to get something out there, right? As early as you possibly can. And when, like, you know, somebody told me once that, like, if you're not like almost embarrassed by what you put out as your first product, you waited too long. And I think that's true. And when they say minimum viable product, really, like, I mean, in WorkCompass, you could log in, right? But you couldn't log out of it. You just have to kill the browser session, right? So it was minimal. But we got it out there. And in the process of while that was going on, I was promoting it in any way I possibly could, right? I was speaking to the press here, anybody I could, right? Contacting HR buyers on LinkedIn, etc. And I mean, by the time we had the thing ready to go, that first beta, that first minimum viable product, the following week we had a paying customer.
Wow.
You know, and
who could never log out.
They might still actually be logged in. I don't know.
But that's like 13 weeks. And then so from when you incorporated, how long between incorporation approximately and that paying customer?
I incorporated the business and then spent, I suppose, over a year doing, you know, researching. Like I incorporated it, the business, and then like went about the process of doing my research and whatnot. Now I was still like working, right? And I think, look, there's a lesson there as well, maybe for people that you know, like work away on this in the you know, as much as you can, right, until you absolutely positively have to, right, give up your day job and jump into the full time.
Is that what you did?
Yeah, I did. Right. No, with the agreement of the guy I was working for.
Yeah.
And to be honest, right, we had a wonderful relationship. We still do. He became my first angel investor, actually.
Okay.
Right? And also, you know, brought along others with him. You know, so work away until you absolutely have to jump into it. You know, because once you do and you stop earning any income, you know, money starts to burn real quick.
Yeah. Sounds like you were obviously wearing different hats as most founders have to, but you know, what are some of the hard decisions that you kind of had to make early on, and saying maybe I can't hire that marketing person just yet, or I need 2 more developers, but I can't.
Like, I mean, at the very, and I'm speaking in the first like months and year and a half, there were no decisions like that. It never entered my head that I could hire a marketing person,
okay,
right? Or a salesperson or anything like that. I needed an engineer to build something, right? Everything else was me. Marketing was me, sales was me, DevOps was me, right? Customer success and support were me. It was me, all me. All right. And until I got to the point where we had, I don't know, 10 odd customers, I think. And I felt like, okay, look, we're pretty credible now in terms of going and raising some external monies. And I can stand over a what I consider a reasonable valuation. Right? There was none of that. There was no thinking about hiring a marketing person or a salesperson or anybody like that. It was just me.
Okay. So, I mean, did you get any sort of funding? I know we'll get to your angels later on, but, you know, from Enterprise Ireland or local enterprise offices, did that help at the start?
Yeah, it did, right? And I think it did. And I think for anybody starting off, it should be something they really explore, because there is money to be had there. Now, there's a process to go through, and it's lengthy, and it involves a lot of forms. But this is taxpayers' money that you're getting, right? And you can't expect to get it without any due diligence. And
It's a good point.
and that's a good thing, right? That's a good thing. You should want your ideas, your business model to be vetted. It'll make it stronger. Now, it can be a lengthy process. You don't have control over the timing of it a lot, but that's it. There's no free money, right? And you're going to have to invest, a portion of your time in completing it. Like, and I think forums, seem to make like founders wilt, right? I don't know what it is about the word, right? But it just seems to just be kryptonite to founders, right? But I think in the as a founder, a solo founder, right? You got to do just a ton of things you just don't want to, and you're going to have to get used to that very, very quickly, right? And I did get grants from local enterprise board, and then later Enterprise Ireland. And if I have my time over, I do exactly the same thing again, because it's money, right? And like, money is your lifeblood, right? It's your air. You cannot continue to exist without it. So go and get it would be my strong advice, but it comes with strings, right? You're going to have to do a lot of work for it, right? You're going to have to fill in a lot of forms, right? But there you go. That's I don't think it should be any other way.
Yeah, that's a good point. As you said about it is taxpayers' money, so treat it with a bit of respect. So, were there any particular programs within the local enterprise office or Enterprise Ireland that really worked for you and really gave you the help that you needed?
On the program side, I wasn't. I never really engaged with like a lot of the programs, let's say, and by programs I mean like the workshops and all that stuff.
Okay.
We did become an HPSU, right? And that was a significant vetting process again on the EI's part, right? But no, I didn't really engage too much with the programs. I'm not sure why actually, but my whole strategy thinking at the time was just get on with it really quickly, and you have to move at pace. You got to move really, really quickly. You got to learn quickly. You got to, I don't want to say fail quickly, right? But you got to make your mistakes and move on really, really fast.
Yeah. And then angels, there must have been a point where you said, okay, we do need a bit of a boost here. Was there a particular moment where that happened, or did it just gradually get to that point?
I kind of, I'd already pretty much decided to say, look, this is credible, right? You can put a business case together for this, right? If you have a product and you've got 10 paying customers, right? And so those were the two milestones. And again, that was based on, conversations I'd had, maybe some of them back out in California again, right? But those were the benchmarks. So I went around the process of creating the product and getting the customers, and then just went out and pitched it. Raising money, I think it's not like applying for a mortgage. I'm just going to go into the bank, fill in a bunch of forms, and hey presto, there's your mortgage, right? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of no's, and I think for anybody who's interested, like the best way to understand, I think actually this guy, I came across it when I was years ago when I was doing this. There's a guy called Brendan Baker, and he was a co-founder of an application called App Maker, and they raised $1 million in seed, right? Which I know is giant by current standards in Ireland, right? But they wrote a great piece about what that process was like, called Anatomy of Seed. And it's well worth a read. It's well worth a look for anybody who's trying to understand what it's like. But you're going to get a lot of no's, and their success rate was 10%. So they pitched 144 people and got 14 yeses. And that's probably about the same experience I had. I had to pitch a lot of people and got mainly no's. Right? So like most of the time it's going to be no's. I think you got to find in those very early stages. I mean, I had an application and 10 paying customers, right? But still, a lot of it was on. You needed people that were really investing in you. You know, that would trust and back you. And who's going to trust and back you? Right? People who know you.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So you got to be prepared for the fact you're going to have to do a lot of work, that you're going to get mainly no's. You got to just realize that when they are investing, it'll be on trust, or it'll be you to a large extent they'll be investing in. Like I didn't develop like a monster business plan. I had a one pager, like literally a single page with like all of the important information on it. And like I knew when I was pitching people, I knew in 5 minutes, 10 minutes if it was going to turn into anything or not.
Okay.
So if people, you know, we ask, oh, I want this and that and the next, and come back to me, and I don't know, and no, they're in or they're out, right? And they're in or they're out in minutes, to be honest.
Yeah.
Try and find nodes, people that can bring people, you know. So and I, you know, that was one of the reasons I think that I was successful, let's say, in raising angel money. Right, so I found a couple of nodes, people that could bring people, you know, that told others, oh, you know, just pitched by this guy, blah blah blah, is doing X, Y, and Z, really interesting stuff. I'm going to put in some money. It's this, right? It's EIS approved, and they brought in people. So find nodes if you can.
And how many angels, or even nodes, have you had throughout the last 8 years?
Oh, I mean, there are, 10 angels have invested in total.
Okay.
10, actually, could be 11. Right, but it's around about that number. So again, right, if you're talking about a 10% success rate, that's a lot of people now you got to pitch to. That's 100.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
And you mentioned nodes as well. Like that's very good advice for anyone, you know, looking down the angel route. You know, what are some of the key things to kind of listen out for to identify whether you could sort of go down that node route? Is it just having someone invest straight away and then proposing, or?
Yeah, I think so. Right. I mean, like once I got got a yes from somebody, like, I mean, ask them, say, you know, great, wonderful, and ask them if there are others, right? And some of them will say no, but some will say yes. Some will say yes, and the fact then that the person that they know is investing is, again, right, just makes it more likely that they're going to come in.
Yeah. So can I ask you a question? Okay, you've 10 paying customers, you've bootstrapped your way to that. Like, does it get frustrating when you see people raising almost millions off an idea?
No, not really, because why are you doing this? You know, I think you got to be very, you know, clear about what it is you want out of this, right? And you can raise $1 million or millions on an idea, but you're going to suffer monster dilution.
Yeah.
Right. And for anybody that so look, you know, for anybody, you know that hasn't gone down that route, just beware or be aware, right, that anybody that does is suffering a lot of dilution, and they're suffering a chunk of dilution up front, but also down the road, right, there's just the terms of these agreements, right, will just claw back more and more and more and more equity. You know, so I mean, I'm not saying that the only reason I started this, right, was, you know, simply for the money. And I think if anybody thinks that this is a good way to make yourself rich, just pick something else. Because, and again, do your research and you'll see that the likelihood, right, of getting to that point is low. I have to be honest, right?
Yeah.
But anybody that's raising millions, right, there's a monstrous cost. And I think this is pain, serious pain for a long, long time. And to come out of the end of that process with very little to show, to me, would be a bitter pill to swallow.
Yeah. And how do you balance it then? You're talking about pain, but you've mentioned 3 kids, your wife, how do you balance what needs to go in in the early days? I mean, early days,
yeah,
years, and your life at home?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, firstly, like it consumes everything, right? All of your time, all of your money, all of your patience, all of your sleep, all of everything. It just eats up, right? Everything. It's a black hole into which everything goes. For me, I mean, I didn't want to totally disconnect myself from my life, from my family. I didn't want to be like entirely absent until this thing worked out. So you got to make for me, I had to just make a lot of decisions. Okay, what am I going to spend my time on? And like my life is maybe approaching monastic, right? I stopped drinking because, well, I couldn't afford it, and I didn't have the time for hangovers, So like, I don't drink. I almost never socialize. I work and I spend time with my family. My kids are all heavily involved in swimming, and that's about all I have in my life, to be honest. So there's like a lot of sacrifices to make, right? But yeah, I don't do much other than work, right, and spend time with my wife, my family. That's about it.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it almost sounds like, that you actually have the autonomy to sort of choose that in a lot of ways. It doesn't sound like it's not your choice.
I don't know if I've ever had less autonomy, to be honest. And to me, one of the big attractions, right, of doing this, right, was the autonomy I thought I'd get, right. And so again, somebody said, "You're
really selling it for any budding entrepreneur out there."
I mean, somebody said to me, I remember, I think it might have been out in California again, and just speaking with other, I think, founders, let's say, that were pitching where I was. And I'm saying, but hey, at least I'll be working for myself and I can call my own shots. And somebody glibly said, yeah, it'll be great. You can decide what 23 hours a day you want to work. and that's completely true. So you are your time is not your own, right? I think like wrestling a bear, you don't get to take a break when you're tired. You get to take a break when the bear is tired. So you're at the behest of of everybody and everything. Now that said, if I had my time over, like would I do it again? 100% yes, right? Despite all the challenge, and I think that's what I really wanted. Like, I wanted to test my mettle. I wanted to see if I could, and I'm getting what I signed up for, but it is, monstrously difficult, monstrously, consuming, but it's extremely satisfying.
Let's dig into that a bit more in terms of the satisfaction you get. I mean, even if you could compare it to being employed, it sounds like you had a great relationship with your boss, so it's not like you hated employment.
No.
But what's the difference? That that really, I suppose, motivates you more than being employed did?
I mean, you were paddling your own canoe, it's you, it's your ideas, it's your hard work, it's your blood, sweat, and tears, right? That will bring this, business to where it is. And that's not to say that, you deserve all the credit. You don't, right? Because you've got to bring people with you, right? If you think you can do this all on your own, you're not going to have much of a business. You need to bring people along with you, right? But to start that, to grow that, to build your ideas and your early work and risks, right, into a scalable business, right, with developing a solution that never existed in the world before you put it into the world, scaling a business with customers in 40 odd countries and 30,000+ users, and I mean, there's a huge sense of satisfaction for me, at least, in doing that. And that's not to say that all the credit is mine. It's absolutely not all of mine. That makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, you talked about bringing people on the journey there because you can't do it on your own the whole way. But how did you do that? I mean, there are obviously companies. I mean, I can think of companies in Cork alone that can pay serious amounts and do pay serious amounts of money and stock and everything else. But how did you attract those people on a bootstrap budget?
Yeah, I think that there's you got to play to your strengths. Right. I think for a certain type of person, this can be very attractive because either they're maybe a little like you, right, and wanted to test their mettle, right, and they maybe won't get an opportunity to do that in a mega business, in a multinational. They want to take career steps very, very quickly, and they can in a startup because you get your hands on stuff that might take you years to get your hands on elsewhere. They want more control, they want more responsibility, they want to move quicker, they're frustrated by, let's say, the pace and often the politics involved in larger organizations, right? I mean, it can be hugely attractive to the right person, right? But you need to be very, very clear about who you are, what it's like. I mean, I wrote like a document, right, like 2 or 3 pages, right? It's a fair bit on what it's like to be here, warts and all. And we share that with people, and we have, like, for everybody that we join, we try and be as open and as honest as you possibly can about what we are and what we aren't, and because I think you really do need to hire for attitude. I think the fit has got to be there, and like I would always look for just that fit in terms of what a candidate wants or what an employee wants and what we do, and that would be more important to me. It is more important to me than tenure in the role or even skill set at sometimes, right? But we've a lot to offer the right. So not like I think any business like us has a lot to offer the right kind of person, right? But the fit has got to be right. They got to be 100% sure what they're walking into. Like, if, for example, somebody thinks they're walking into a smaller version, right, of Facebook, they're not. I mean, Facebook is a corporation, right? I think Twitter still calls themselves a startup. I mean, it's not, right? It's not. You're not walking into a business, right, that has giga resources, and if you're coming in, you're wondering who's responsible for something, it's you, so as long as they get that, right, that can be a good fit. But yeah, you will attract. It's not for everybody, and it's not for the faint of heart, right? But you'll attract people, right, to a startup because you can offer them some things that large organizations can't.
Yeah.
So look for those people.
You make it sound so easy.
Yeah, it's not. None of it is easy, right? I mean, every single day is solving problems, right? and you progress from, you solve bigger problems, more complex problems, but it's always solving problems. And I think, I don't know, like, is that any different from like somebody that's bootstrapping as opposed to somebody that's taking some institutional money? Probably not. I think institutional money can be just a little bit of pain relief. It's like, oh, thank God, phew. I got a bit of runway, right? And you get an hour of pain relief before the cold sweat starts to come in terms of the issues are the problems this is now brought with it, because it's going to bring a whole new set of problems.
Yeah,
it'll solve some, right? But here's the next batch.
So is hiring on, mentioned attitude and values, has that become easier over time? Because, a lot of people would find that a very hard thing to do, is to gauge someone's attitude and values in the context of an interview.
Very, very hard. And it has not gotten easier. In fact, it's gotten harder, I think. It is very hard to judge, and I think on both sides, right? So, I mean, you're trying to articulate what a day-to-day life is like in your business. And like, until somebody has come in and seen it, they really, unless they've worked in a business that is at a similar size and scale and in technology and scaling at a similar rate, it's very, very hard for them to understand what it's like. Now, you can do your best to explain it, but there's still no experience for experience. There's still, it's still no replacement for actually coming in and living it.
Yeah.
So no, it's not getting easier. I mean, job market in general, right, has been just incredibly difficult for the past year. Right? I think nobody moved during COVID. Right, everybody was staying put, and then post-COVID, like all that pent-up not moving, all of a sudden, right, led to the Great Resignation, as they described it in the US. Right, I mean, that was difficult. It's very, very difficult. So yeah, no, not easy. I think you've got to do your best to find people that would be a good fit, to be as open and as honest about what it's like to work here, and do your best, but like, look for fit.
Yeah. Okay. And look, in terms of sales and marketing, doing that on a bootstrap budget tends to be the areas that a founder will look at last, because they do that a lot themselves, as you've mentioned. I looked at one of your competitors in the US that, have raised huge amounts, and I think their growth marketing team alone is the size of your company. So I mean, how do you still go about on marketing your business when that's kind of what you're competing against in a lot of ways?
Yeah, I that's a good question, right? I think if you are, if you were just competing on the same basis as them, you just forget it. You haven't got a hope, right? I mean, they have a louder megaphone than you do, right? You are not going to be heard. You're not going to be seen. You will not be visible, okay? But, right, I think there are two ways in which you can compete, right? So, in the din of everybody shouting and roaring, right, about how amazing online, about how amazing their products are, if you are saying something different than the others, you'll stand out. And if you are saying it someplace different, you will stand out. So those are two things that I are worth thinking about, I think. It's kind of like AdWords, for example, right? In my naivety, right, I probably thought at the beginning, right, that's once we built a product, like, oh, fantastic, job done.
Yeah.
Right? Now it's Google AdWords for me, and I can get to like Googling private islands. Yeah, but again, that's how naive I was, despite the huge amount of preparation that I had done. But you're just not going to go. If you're hoping to compete head to head on spend on AdWords, forget it. You're just not going to do it, right? It's not possible. So, I mean, we've directed our attention more to outbound methods, right? Multi-touch cadences that start off with email, with LinkedIn, with phone, and you know that works, right? That works. So like we're, I suppose, trying to have the conversation differently than our direct competitors. We were, I think, probably the first ones to start talking about the need to overhaul traditional performance management and replace these backward-looking, judgment, autocratic conversations with something that was more objective, more forward-looking, and more focused on coaching. So we started talking about something different, and we started talking in a different way or a different channel to people. So we were reaching out to people saying, hey, this is what we're about. Do you want to have a conversation? Right? We weren't trying to go head to head with our competition in terms of buying AdWords.
Yeah.
And we weren't saying the exact same thing that they were. You mean you need to be meaningfully different to your competition, and you need to have a strategy. I mean, so how do you figure that strategy out, right? I mean, I'm not a sales guy, nor am I a marketing guy, but I think I'm really just a problem solver, right? I think that's what I really am, So I'll take it on, and I'll learn about the problem. I'll learn about possible solutions. I'll do some tests, and I'll kind of get there and move on to the next one. But in the process of trying to solve this problem, I came across a wonderful book called Traction, and it was written by a guy. It is written by a guy called Gabriel Weinberg, and I can't say it's a blueprint, right, for designing product or marketing or customer acquisition methods or models, right? But it is a blueprint to find out which one will work for your business.
Okay.
All right. So, what might the channels be that are appropriate? How do you rank them? How do you go about the process of testing them? How do you scale them? Right. That to me was, I talked about Brendan Baker and the Anatomy of a Seed.
Yeah.
That was a wonderful piece, right? That was hugely valuable for me. Traction was another wonderful book that was hugely valuable for me, Gabriel Weinberg. The guys at Bullet, a Dublin financial software business, guy Peter O'Connor, wrote a great piece called "How to Get 100K." Right, so it is actually a blueprint
Brilliant.
for dealing with and working with the institutions in Ireland. Right, I mean, in what order, at what times, what will they want? Right, that was another wonderful piece as well that I learned a lot from. Does that answer? Yeah,
Perfect.
Does that answer the question?
Great nuggets that we can link to people at the end of this as well. But no, that's great. And you talked about, I think, Bullet there and the 100K, and leads me on to my next point around funding and institutional funding. Where do you stand on that now? Is it something that's always under consideration, or are you headstrong on staying bootstrap for as long as you can?
I suppose the strategy hasn't changed all that much, right? I mean, I'm not opposed to it at all. Like every, you're constantly maintaining relationships. You're constantly, keeping a weather eye on what's happening. I think that for me, it's like, okay, can we get to the next phase, the next level of growth without it? If the answer is yes, well then carry on. And if the answer is no, well, maybe that's the time to start considering it.
Okay.
But I think in the early stages as a micro business, right? I think, think of it as kind of like trying to bake a cake, right? And in those very, very early days, it doesn't matter if you have one oven or 10 ovens. It's still going to take you an hour to bake the cake, right? So can money solve that problem for you? No. If you think that money, I'll hire the people and they'll figure it all out, right? They'll design the product, they'll design product marketing, those aren't employees that you're looking for. Those are co-founders you're looking for. employees, and that's not to say that you won't hire senior staff or staff that can come in and solve problems, right? But you need to know what the product is, who the market is. You need to have tested all of that. You need to have the raw material for them to come in and scale that. But if you don't know those things, you're not ready for employees, and as a consequence, you're not ready for money.
Okay.
In my view, and again, but I'm only speaking from personal experience, and I'm only speaking about my own business, type of business, which is a SaaS software business, right? I mean, there's lots of businesses where you forget it, right? You're not gonna, if you want to go build cars, right? You can't, you actually need to build the equipment to build the car, right? So you need a ton of money up front, right? If your business requires a ton of R&D, right, before you're going to develop a product. If it's if it's pharmaceutical, right, that's obviously the model I've used won't work there either.
Yeah.
So it's not one size fits all, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we'll play it by ear then.
I know maybe that's not much direction, and it is. I mean, there's got to be. There does need to. You do need to have a plan. You do need to. I think early businesses, startups can look a little chaotic, right? To people that come in and want and see them, right? But if it is just chaos, you're in trouble, right? There's a difference between chaos, right, and moving at pace and testing and learning and changing, right, and moving on again, doubling down on what works, stopping the things that do not work. That's not chaos. That's moving at pace, right? So be that kind of busy, not the chaos busy.
Yeah.
Although those can look the same.
And what is kind of what's the next year or two look like for WorkCompass? What's the vision?
Scale.
Okay.
And the majority of our customers are 90+% of our customers are in the United States. We don't see that changing anytime soon. We're working on a whole bunch of new features we're pretty excited about. We've successfully developed AI for coaching. We're moving on, and we're looking at how we can build on that and make coaching more contextual. So coach based on the individual, not just the results at a point in time. Help people surface insights about what high performance and high performers look like in their organization, the DNA of high performance, in other words, in your organization. So we're pretty excited about that. In the US, right, this is becoming it's on the agenda. It's high on the agenda. It's in the top 3 priorities for HR buyers, and that's not going away anytime soon, right? Because the talent market is super competitive. Retention and attrition are massive concerns now for all businesses, and one of the principal reasons why people move is they're not actually leaving their job, they're actually leaving their boss a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So upskilling their bosses, helping them coach, right, is not just there's so many benefits to it. It's not just helping people perform better, but being more satisfied in their roles, being more engaged, and staying longer.
Nice. And looking back, if you're retired, and I suppose what success would look like to you, you talked about your why at the very start. Why are you doing this? Is that picture clear?
No.
I thought so.
No, maybe your story kind of evolves as you go along, But having said that, at the beginning you do need a strong reason for embarking on this journey. You do need it. It's got to be something you just can't shake, I think. And if it's the idea that you might become rich, and you might, right? But if it's just the idea that you could become rich, just pick something else. Really. because there's easier ways to become wealthy if that's your principal goal. So I don't know, right? I think it evolves. It evolves as maybe I grow and it grows. Yeah, is that much of an answer? I don't know.
Yeah, no, like not knowing is knowing. Do you know? So
yeah, well, yeah.
yeah. Well, look, I suppose I've got the checklist here of how to go about bootstrapping your business. First, give up alcohol, leave the friends WhatsApp group. Is there any last piece of advice you'd have for anyone out there who might be thinking about the same thing?
I remember again very, very early. I was at something. It was a function in Cork, and there was a person speaking at it who had been a very successful founder and American. And I remember listening to him, and he described the experience as like a near-death experience. And I remember being very cynical, going, "Oh, yeah, here we go," and I poo-pooed it, and I was cynical about the way he described it. But having been through it, it is kind of like a series of near-death experiences. My kids were watching something a while back called Silicon Valley. So it was a series. It was on Channel 4. I'm sure it's on some streaming service now. It's at this stage by Mike Judge, but it's about a tech business called Pied Piper that starts in California in this scale. And at the beginning and end of every episode, they're either worth $1 billion or they're about to be broke. Right? And it is very, very funny, but it's kind of like that. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of truth in it.
Brilliant. Well, we'll add that to the links at the end as well. Denis, thanks very much for taking the time to speak with us, and for your very honest stories and sharing your experience over the last 8 years. So appreciate it. Wishing you and the rest of your team at WorkCompass all the best, and we look forward to seeing where you are in 2 years' time.
Thanks, James. It's nice talking to you.
Take care. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.